about the things that mean so much to you and me. Let's talk.
And here's your host, Henry Benefield.
Hi everybody, welcome to another program of Let's Talk. As you just heard, I'm your host, Henry Benefield. I'm honored to have you looking at us today. Certainly want to thank you all for your support for the many years that we've been on the air. You certainly make a difference when we see you in the public and you acknowledge how much you enjoy this program. Today we're going to talk about just regular folks, conversation. Normally we have a dignitary or someone of prominent status on the telephone. We have the most important people in the world, regular folks, on the program today. Now, certainly their positions are quite prestigious, but we're coming today as just regular people. We're noticing a lot of conversation in the community in reference to a lot of social issues of what's going on. We're going to address some things, some of the politics stuff. We are always here, or always there in the community, dealing with some of the social issues that exist in the city of Cincinnati, not just particularly in the black community, but in communities, just period. Also, had some concerns, and I thought it would be interesting to discuss it. I've not heard a lot of discussion about it, but just, touching a little bit on the Me Too movement. What is the quintessential goal for it? What are some of the pros? What are some of the cons that come out of that in all of the conversation? And it's all designed to get you to talking, which definitely produces a lot of results, good results. When people talk, that's good communication. Things come out and folks find out things, perhaps to learn or to find out things about themselves that I need to change, or something that I need to give to somebody, information that I need to know. So first of all, let me welcome a lovely lady that you all know. She's hosted the show many times when I've actually not been able to make it here. She is a minister from Zion Global Church. Please welcome on our discussion, Minister Leslie Calhoun. Welcome, Minister.
I'm glad to be here. How are you?
I'm very well. You're looking just as lovely as you always look.
Thank you.
Such a pleasure. Such a pleasure.
Looking forward to it.
And then we have a friend of mine that's also very active in the city of Cincinnati, who has a lot of discussion with different ministers, social activities, just all around the city, has his hands on the heartbeat of the city, transcends from political groups to intellectual groups, and just basically, he's there, but never has been an outstanding or outspoken person. But I thought he would really be good in this discussion because of the simple fact that he is in contact with a lot of different folks. Please welcome Reverend John Crumley. Welcome to the program, Reverend Crumley.
All right, thank you.
Man, it's such a pleasure to have you here.
Such a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely.
Likewise.
Amen. So listen, we're going to talk about, first of all, we're going to talk about the state of Cincinnati. And in the state of Cincinnati, I kind of wanted to put out on the table the discussion about what's going on. I know many things about the black community. We talk about black on black crime. Mm-hmm. We talk about advancements of blacks. We talk about homeless here, drugs and things like that. It all culminates into some social issues in reference to the community itself. I mean, let's hit it off. What are we talking about? What is the status of the black on black crime? Do you think that we are approaching it? We know it is consistent. I mean, what is the state? And then we'll move on from there. Let's start with you, Minister Leslie.
Black on black crime.
When we have, and I'm sure it's self-explanatory, how a lot of the black men are shooting at each other at a astronomical rate. The simple fact that it's just really been very crazy how much violence is in the black community, perpetrated by blacks.
Wow, that's quite interesting. I see it in a different perspective. I see the black on black crime, but what I also see is the generating cause being something deeper than just violence.
Okay.
Poverty, unemployment, lack of desire. There's a whole lot of reasons that this is occurring. Coming from a perspective in outreach, which I work in every day. Sure. I see young people who are extremely depressed. Okay. Extremely living with no hope, it seems as though. So to put it in a sense of black on black crime, I wouldn't categorize what I'm seeing as that. I see it ends up being crime, but I think it's generated from a whole lot of different reasons.
Sure,
and
sure.
So that I can expound.
Let's look at that. We talk about the fact that it is a black on black crime, but there are undertones of reasons why it ends up being black on black crime. So you talked about no hope. And I guess I'm looking at our community years and years ago. Not that we did not have crime, but would you agree or disagree it wasn't as prevalent as it is today? The kinds of crimes that we're seeing, the killings and all the crazy stuff that's going on. Would you at least agree that it's more prevalent today than it used to be in the past?
I wouldn't agree. Only thing I would agree to is that because of social media, you got Facebook. I think crime has always been around.
Well, I'm saying the murders, the gun violence and stuff like that, and certainly a lot more drugs in our community.
Let me think about that.
Okay.
Because I think that crime has always been around, as I was saying, but it seems like it's expounded upon more now because of there's more avenues to get the information.
Sure.
To say that it has increased, I mean, you go back to the Bible and you saw whole kinds of different things that were going on that were demonstrative and evil and wicked and crazy, but I think because of social media and the access to information, that it seems more expounded. So I don't know how much increased it is, like as opposed to now in the 60s or now in the 40s. Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, you could take it back to any realm. I'm reflecting upon my life experience. When I was growing up, there were incidences that happened in the community, but not like what we're experiencing today. And it wasn't, in my personal testament, it's not in reference to the exposure of getting the information. It just didn't exist. We didn't hear a lot of gun violence that we're hearing today, in my opinion, that when I was coming up. So I brought that up because I think in order to get to what some of the points that you made, we have to acknowledge the fact that what the state is at the moment, to go and look at some of the options to deflect some of the negatives that we're dealing with today. That's why I said, and I guess Reverend Cromley, you could jump in on this as well, in reference to Minister Leslie says she doesn't feel it's greater because it is more exposure. It seems to be greater because we have much more sensationalism on what's going on in the black community. I don't know, when you were younger, was the community as violent then as it is today? With the gun violence, I kind of specifically pointed that out, and I'm just more or less trying to talk about it to get the discussion out.
No, the gun violence, I grew up in Avondale, so the gun violence wasn't where it's at now.
Okay.
Wasn't close as where it is now. I think a lot, but a lot of it has to do with the poverty.
Sure.
That's in the neighborhood.
I agree.
And then there's things when we were coming up, like going to the center, and a lot of people went to community to box. So a lot of boxers come out the community, and now we live in poverty now, and everybody that has 4 or 5 kids can financially be able to send their kids to the center.
Sure.
Which we used to didn't pay anything, just get somebody a card, and your guardian or your parent, they signed the card and you was in there.
So the thing to be conscientious of is the fact that there were alternatives that caught your attention as a younger person when you were a young adult, versus you're saying they don't exist or they do exist, but there's been a cost attached to it, where folks who don't have incomes cannot use those resources that they used to be able to use when we were younger.
Right.
Okay. So, that's really interesting, because we talk about discussions and the things that we should fight for. If we know that this is a possible asset to diversion, not the answer to diversion, to doing some of those things, would it appear that we should be fighting more for that kind of opportunity?
As opposed to what?
As opposed to not fighting for anything like that at all.
Yeah, I think we should be saying something more about it.
You know what I'm saying? If they have, like the Y or Boys Club, and I'm not saying you're saying those organizations, but if there was such a thing as, the Scouts or something, I don't know.
Right.
And kids had an opportunity to focus their minds, because that's a little scripture says, an idle mind breeds confusion. I found that young people, when they have some kind of focus, somewhere doing something, it's an asset to deter them from doing some of the things that would end up being negative. Would you all agree or disagree?
Yes, that's
I
true.
agree with that.
So to have that opportunity, understanding that the parent may not always have to be at home to do something with the children, but they don't have to be on the computer or on the telephone, because now we're giving them a source to focus their attention on. I mean, you guys jump in, help me out here. I don't know.
No, that's true.
A lot of it still centers, I think, around economics. A lot of the programs that Reverend Crumley were discussing no longer have funding to do the neighborhood. When I was growing up in Lincoln Heights, we had neighborhood services, after school programs, different activities, brownies, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, where people could go and engage in, but those things don't exist as
Options
widely
today.
because funding is not available, or people don't, have volunteers.
So not that we know the answer. If those things helped in the community, what are some of the options we have to try to get those back? Because I'm convinced if we can go after funding, after school programs, certainly this would fall under after school programs, or within church ministries or community. I know there are many community councils. I think it's 57 or however many community council agencies in the city of Cincinnati, to be aware. And I guess what I'm getting at, are we aware, not us individually, but are we as a community, citywide community, aware of some of the options that can be used to deter focuses of young people, where they don't end up on the negative, to fight for those, to get those in place, to give those kids options?
And as you said, that I'm saying, are we aware? I'm saying, do we care? I don't think people care.
Okay.
I don't believe people care like they used to. We're living in a genre where the average age of a grandmother is 36 to 40.
And that's okay.
We're living in a genre, a time where parents of children are 16, and I know we've always had that.
Yeah.
But when I was growing up, I had a whole lot of mentors who were older, 20, 30 years older than me, and that group of people is not as active.
So you've hit on 2 points, in which I love, because I love how you folks bring out things and you get to the root of situation. I always go to the foundation. You said 2 things. Folks don't care. That's a serious issue, number 1.
Yeah.
Folks don't care.
A lot of folks don't. Not all people, but yeah.
Again, whoever, whenever, whatever, folks do not care. The fact that people don't care is a very serious issue. So if I'm saying to someone listening to this program, do you care? Do you really care? And if you care, to understand, I don't have to necessarily go downtown and pick up City Hall on my shoulders, but to have a little bit of attention on something, to be able to care enough to either go out and represent it or go out and make notice that this is what's necessary. And then you talked about we're living in a different age right now where folks are not really focused on what's really important. Have we lost what was in place when we were children? I'm just saying, this is not just African American folks. This is a citywide issue, because this kind of thing transcends all over the city, all over the state, all over the United States of America. And I guess what I like about this is that we're coming back to a simple fact that, yeah, you can look at an orchard that's rotten. I'm talking about multiple trees with supposed to give good fruit, where the apples are rotten. But do we ever stop to recognize it may not necessarily be the fruit, but what's going on at the root?
Okay.
Yeah, and I want to clarify something. Not that I think people don't care because they just are mean and evil.
No,
I think
we didn't take that like that.
no, I didn't think you did. I'm trying to bring it out to the public as far as I think people don't care because they have so many other things that they have to focus on, surviving, dealing with day-to-day issues. How am I going to take care of my home? How am I going to get my child
Certainly
to school and get to work at the same time?
so
there's a whole lot of issues. When I say, I just felt the
Yes,
need
ma'am.
to make it
Yes, ma'am.
that I don't think people are just being.
So am I being insensitive to bring out a point that prior to the comfort zone, and I didn't say we're in the pleasure zone, but the comfort zone that we're in right now, because there was a time when most folks in our community had nothing. You know, there are a lot of people who have homes. There are a lot of people who have apartments. There are a lot of people who have cars. There are a lot of people who have a lot of amenities. You know, we have jobs better than we've ever had them before. Not that everything is perfect. Do not get me wrong. I'm not talking about it's perfect. But I'm saying it is better than it used to be. Okay. But yet, during the time when it was really bad, they found time. They found time.
Right.
So is it a fact of not alluding to what Minister Calhoun said, is it a fact that really there is no focus that this is really necessary to do? This is important to our community. They don't know that this is something that is important that we need to do. And this is why we bring out these kind of conversations, because I think people become frustrated, but we never get options. What can I do to get rid of my frustration? I'm tired of the kids killing kids. I'm tired of this and blah. What do I do? So we're saying, first of all, care. That's a first start. So I'm talking a lot. Please interject.
Well, I just think some of the reasons is it's coming up. Everybody was your mother, and everybody was your father.
Ooh.
But now we live in different times where you can say something to somebody, or chastise a little kid that's really out of order, and now it's a conflict or can lead to a fight.
But now you brought this up, and my mind always goes when
All
people
right.
bring these topics. I think you are 1,000% right. But my question is, what changed to not make everyone your mother?
The concern, kind of piggybacking off of Minister Calhoun.
Can you be more detailed?
I believe there's less caring. I'm not saying they don't care, but you get caught up with everyday life. Mm-hmm. And you get sidetracked, and then sometimes you don't get sidetracked. Sometimes it's not even in you.
And I see that in a different perspective.
Okay.
It's, and that's why I love inviting different people with different points of views. I see it from a perspective of folk not understanding the value of having a support system with you as a parent. Okay. Because what happened when I was growing up, we didn't have child care. When we came home from school, got out of school, we were supposed to go home, go upstairs. It was all the kids upstairs after school. Who watched us was not a person in our apartment, but there was a lady downstairs. She was an older lady and her husband named Mrs. Payton. And if we even thought about coming down the steps, Miss Payton would open the door and say, if you don't get back up them stairs, when your mother come home and your father come home, I'm going to tell them. But one thing my parent did, if Miss Payton said something to them about what we were doing, they respected her enough to know she wasn't going to lie on the kids.
I agree. So my question is, where are the Miss Paytons today?
That's what we're talking about.
Asking you. Where do you
Right.
think they
That's
are?
well. I think they're out there. I think that some folks don't know they can be Miss Paytons, or parents know it's okay to have a Miss Payton. It's okay to have somebody that you trust, because we talk about it takes a village. I have truly found that your children will always be one way with you, but when they leave your presence, they are in a total different character. But what was always necessary, folks would see you, folk from the church, and then if you're at the store, you're at the park, you're doing something really crazy, about to throw a rock. If you throw that rock, I'm going to tell your mother. Mm-hmm. But think about it today. the child throw the rock, and then the person takes the child to the parent because they don't want anything to happen to the parent. They tell the parent, and they have the child out of. First of all, what you doing with your hand on my child? I don't be touching my child.
That's what I was saying.
Right. So is that attitude acceptable? Is that tearing down the possible patents, discouraging folks that could be an asset to you as a parent?
When the mom or the dad is 16, they don't have the mental capacity to make wise adult decisions.
Well, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying, and I respect that.
Okay.
But the bottom line is that, number one, we've had parents that were 15, 16 years. We had a family that supported those kids. And the same thing you go about people caring. It was the grandmother that instilled into those young parents. It was the aunt that instilled into the young parents. It was the uncles, the cousins, and stuff like that. There was always a support system. When we take out the community, of course they're not going to know anything because nobody's putting anything in them. Because it's what you said. They don't care. So it's a serious, and it's not a color thing. It's a community or family-oriented thing, understanding how important the family is and respecting the contributions that everybody in my family brings to me and my personal family. I think that's what's been lost. Everything's become so selfish. I don't want you to say nothing to my children. People get remarried and they become one, except when it comes to children. The previous children, the new husband can't say something to him. His previous children, the new wife can't say anything. Rather than all of them becoming their children. This is my stepdad. This is my stepmother. She has just as much rule to say something to me. So what changed is the mind of the people. And is that an asset? Is that really a benefit to us as people? And again, I'm not talking about racial barriers, but I'm talking about us as human beings, where it does take a village. It takes people. I've studied, and I've found times have always been hard for everybody. It's always been hard. And the facts that Minister Calhoun brought is true. But in some cases, can we use that as an excuse for not doing better? And my comment would be, no, we cannot. The only thing we can simply say is, what am I doing to make sure I'm using every asset that's available to me to help with these children? Because you know what sometimes I love about kids? Grandma didn't watch them every night. The cousins might have had them over their house, but you knew they were your cousins. You might spend the whole weekend over there. They go back home with their parents. They might go over to the cousin. It might be uncle taking the boys out to the baseball game or something like that, or White Castles or something, or grandma, or auntie, or whoever. You know what I mean? Somebody had something that was a connection to help us because we realized the importance of what everybody brought to the table. So anyway, I don't want to hog this conversation. Somebody say something.
Well, yeah, I just think that sometimes it's not, I heard what you said, but I think that sometimes it's not an excuse. I think that sometimes it's just have become because of some people operating out of fear. It's just a way of life. Am I saying it's right? No. But I'm saying sometimes it's so much confrontation when you do go to chastise somebody's child. And
So,
whichever
that's an
way,
issue right there.
yeah, whichever way that you do it, doesn't matter about it being correct or incorrect. It's just that some folks don't want you to say nothing, period.
And that's an issue right there.
Yeah, to their child.
Because is that a lack of respect for elders and what elders bring to a family? There's sometimes, I recognize with my mother, even though I'm an adult, my mother has a tendency of being my mother. And even though I'm independent. And I recognize one thing, in some battles, you're just not going to win. So just let her be who she is. You get what I'm saying?
Okay.
So the bottom line is that, but even though I'm older, I never miss an opportunity to listen to the wisdom that comes out of her, or listen to the wisdom that comes out of an older person or experienced person that knows things. I never miss out on an opportunity on that. Passing down, like she said, they don't know. Passing down information to say you need to really listen to old folks. You need to sit and learn something from, or respect elders. I learned things, and I'm wondering, is this coming out when I was a young guy? Boys don't hit girls. That didn't come from my father. It didn't come from my mother. But it came from one of my peers in the neighborhood. So I've never had a desire to hit a female because I learned the value of females and that we men don't hit girls. But when we see people, the boys boxing with his girlfriend or wife or whoever, and my question would be, how does he know he's not supposed to hit girls?
Okay.
Did somebody pass that on? So I'm going back to the root of some of the things to be aware of that can be done to divert, no matter how minute it may seem to us, the fact that it is important. Things like, I was taught, yes ma'am, no ma'am, thank you, please, excuse me, may I? That's just being polite. And I'll tell you, to this very day, in corporate America, that has been one of the greatest tools that I have, is to be able to respect individuals. And in return, I get the respect that I asked for. So anyway, talk, you guys.
Alrighty. Well, I'll, like I said, go back to kind of what, like Mr. Calhoun said, sometimes we have the assumption of what they should know, but sometimes, like she said, they're young. It depends on where they come from, and sometimes it doesn't depend on where they come from.
Sure.
Sometimes it depends on what they learn, because a lot of people are easily influenced.
Sure.
And do they come from a good home?
So, like what she said, who's teaching them?
I'm saying some have been taught, but they've been easily influenced from outsiders.
Well, and I can see that too.
So everyone that gets caught up in the system, a lot of folks say they come from a bad home, but that's not. I disagree with that, because I've known folks that I come from good homes.
Sure.
They just was easily influenced by outsiders.
Sure.
They wanted to get in where they fit in. So sometimes it was real costly.
And of course, that's going to be some people. That's
Right.
just going to be that
Good
way.
amount, actually.
Yeah, and this is not, we certainly are not categorizing the
Yeah.
whole generation of Cincinnatians or a certain community. We're not doing it, but we're talking about specific options
Right.
available to us as human beings, whether you are whatever, a parent is a parent. Mm-hmm. If we and I had to find out, I hear words like they, society, they, and I was asking someone the other day, I said, who is society? And then when I read it, I'm society, you're society, she's society, we're society. So we make decisions in reference to us, as far as the way things should go. So I guess my question again is, what do you guys think can be done? We know it exists. This is just, we're not professionals to psychologists, but just regular folks. You're a mother, you're a dad, a preacher, you're a minister, she's a professional, works with the social community a lot.
I just think the community have to come together more, but
How so?
But not just after shooting.
How so?
How so?
Everybody's saying come together. How so?
Well, come together and address some of the issues that we're talking about tonight. Not after your grandson or after somebody been shot, your next door neighbor, and then it's a. What would be a format for the community coming together on? Well, I guess you have to start in the community and neighbor, whatever they call it.
Neighbor committees.
Yeah, the different committees in your neighborhood. Then maybe enough come together, maybe go down to City Hall. I just think we're not holding different people accountable for different things.
A friend of mine works for a major school district. I won't name the school district, but it's in the tri-state area. Mm-hmm. And she said the children age 5 are so off the chain in their attitudes and in their behaviors.
Wow.
A lot of that could be based upon a lot of things. Could be their home environment. It could be mental things. It could be they didn't eat, were hungry or whatever. But you're saying some of the places where people can start, we can have people go to volunteer at the schools, go into the schools and try to assist. And
I'm glad you said that, because you know what? A lot of people don't know you can volunteer. Great point. I'm glad you said
sitting
that.
in classrooms, going to your council meetings. There's a whole lot of things people can do, but a lot of this, in my opinion, I'm coming from a spiritual base now. A lot of this stuff is just spiritual, that we who have the ability to reign and command things in the atmosphere need to stand up in our authority and do that.
Now that's a whole nother topic.
Well,
Wow.
But to talk about what's going on, because I grew up in a home where my dad was present. My mother and my father were together until he passed.
Sure.
60-some years. Every one of my friends had their mother and their father in the
Sure.
home. I didn't know a family that had a single parent
Sure.
when I was growing up in the Holly homes. And then as time goes on, things change. It's almost like that scenario where the frog is put into a pot of boiling water. He's dropped into the boiling water. He jumps out because he realizes that the water is hot and boiling and he could die. But they say you put that frog in the water, that the temperature is acclimated and it's lukewarm. He'll stay in there because he becomes comfortable with the environment. Some kind of way, somewhere along the line, things kind of changed and people became acclimated and comfortable in their circumstances. Not that they didn't care. I just think, and that was my point when I say people didn't care, because of selfishness or because they just, don't give a darn about everybody else.
Not
they
in a
don't
negative
care
sense.
because they don't
Sure.
know how to
Sure,
care.
sure.
And so
And
that was
I-
my only point to share. People don't do anything differently because they don't know what else to do.
And that's the purpose of this topic. The fact of assuming in a lot of situations, because we hear so many negatives, oh, we need to stop this, and this needs to change, and blah, blah, blah. And folks are frustrated with the lack of any change because is it for real? They don't know how to change it. And if they don't know how to change it, where are we bringing the information where it can be changed at any level? It doesn't have to be a major, minute, but anything. That's what we talked about, parenting and having the community. Rather than cussing out the person that brings your child to make you aware of happen, be thankful and respect that person, because if the child sees you doing that to somebody, they're going to feel comfortable to do all that crazy stuff around anybody. But knowing that there's another eye watching them, wouldn't that certainly be a deterrent to a child to do something wrong? If they know that Miss Johnson, Miss Leslie, or Mr. Crumley might be able to see, Mr. Henry might see me somewhere and get back to my mother.
You started the program about what about black on black crime, and that I still base. I think we're talking about people who are frustrated, who don't have any, feel like they don't have any options, who need to be introduced to a different way of life.
I agree.
And so it's kind of hard to say what is generated from or why it shouldn't exist at all.
Okay.
But why it exists, and I just literally hate that term, black on black crime, because it just seems like it just is so categorical. It's just so defining to me in my head. It's like,
Sure.
Crime is crime, insult is insult, wrong is wrong, and to hear it saying black on black crime, to me kind of, I don't know the word that I'm trying to use, not demean the act itself.
Sure.
So.
And I'm sorry, were you finished?
No, I wasn't, but you interrupted me, so now I don't know what I was going to, what my
But
flow
go ahead,
was going
I
to
certainly
be.
want to-
That's okay, carry on, because I'll think about it.
And while I do understand that, I think the fact of calling it what it is and what a concern is, statistically, there's a higher percentage in the African American community of that kind of, especially male on male crime. And in other communities is not as prevalent as it is in a lot of black communities. I think you hit a very prevalent point of reason why these things occur, poverty, the frustration, the lack of so on, so on. But the fact is, it's a documented fact. There is a lot of black on black crime. If it was women on women crime, or what Asian on Asian, we could talk about that too. But to identify what we're speaking of, I said black on black crime because I do believe, as you said, and I brought it out because I wanted to get to the roots of possibilities of why this kind of stuff is occurring. We've talked about it and people have mentioned specifics about it, but nothing's being done. Well, I don't want to say nothing's being done. Do people clearly on just an everyday basis understand what are some of my options of preventing this kind of stuff? What can I do to prevent my child or my person or individual from becoming so frustrated that they want to kill somebody? They're so frustrated with their social situation that they feel so hopeless. And I go back to, again, before segregation, African Americans had their own businesses and opportunities were given to young African American men. If it was just a carpenter, somebody that just janitorial work, there were opportunities that were not dependent on everybody else for our success. And this is just me talking. I'm going on history. We had our own hotels. We had our own car shops. We had our own grocery store. So the simple fact that a young man, like a other community, if someone is young and they come into a certain age, you go down and see Mr. So-and-so, so-and-so. You walk in as an apprentice, don't know them. But the opportunity for them to work came out of their community. Mm-hmm. It came out of the community.
So what happened to these businesses?
When we started integrating with people, we lost interest in community and got more focused on my ebonics. I loved it. More focused on everybody else and fitting in with everybody else, not recognizing that charity begins at home.
So did we abandon the businesses? I'm trying to hear what happened.
We abandoned our focus, our community focus, in reference to our businesses. In other words, back in the day when so-and-so had a grocery store, all the folks in that community supported his grocery store. And so what happens when all these opportunities, we didn't have to go, we started going to other people's grocery store, not understanding that by supporting that grocery store in our community, he's going to give our kids jobs, give me a job, bringing in quality food, supporting him so he can bring better food into the business. We started going other places.
Yeah.
Reverend Cromley.
Yeah, that's true. Because like now, there's nothing in Avondale. No stores, really. Like Burnett used to be full of stores. So I do understand, the focus. We wasn't supporting in a lot of business places. A lot of places ran out of business. Went out of business because the money wasn't coming in. Just taking the money other places. So more and more folks had to shut down.
And then you brought a big one, economic support. Have we focused on economic support? Why it is important to keep economic support? And I guess the part that kind of got me, and I'm certainly, folks, I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but we talk about all of the handouts that some organizations give, and I hope I'm not upsetting anybody, this is just a point. In order for certain folks to survive, funding here, funding there, funding whatever. But I remember the Montgomery boycott. And what happened, that was such a powerful statement because even though it was pennies, basically, to ride the bus, the fact that there was a unity where people understood we as a mass are not going to support this injustice. We're going to make this stand and make this change and say whatever it costs. People would, when the ride share folks to work, cab companies, black cab companies or whatever, or you could stay downtown close to my house and go to work, just pay me for this room and go back home on the weekend. But it was total support. And though one person may have only had pennies on the dollar for that week, but the mass congregation dented that organization that said, we will never change this, you will never affect us, that it literally brought this company to its knees. Pennies. But the power of the collection changed the economic situation where it benefited that they could sit anywhere on the bus. And do we have that kind of focus today to make changes? We hear all the time the power of our economics in America. But are we really focusing on making it, or being aware, as you say, that I need to support if this transpires? This person says, I don't want those jive time turkeys in my place, and the fact that we could possibly be offended by jive time turkey. Of course, they said worse words than that, but jive time turkeys, and certainly we don't want to be called jive time turkeys, to stand together to make a change.
Okay.
That's something to think about, everybody. Something definitely to think about, supporting something that's on the positive to make a difference, that's going to advance and give opportunity to all of us, from not necessarily from a major, big monstrosity scale, but from just a little personal. Things to make you say, And that's what we're here for on Let's Talk, to create discussion about possibilities. And I love the different perspectives. Thank you, my guests. We're going to come right back, but we have a little taste of the 100 Plus African American Men's Course, something that you guys have supported for many years. When you see this, this is actually expounding on what we're talking about today. You have citywide men, African American men, that ask the city of Cincinnati to support them in supporting young African American youth, to support African American businesses like the bus tours, to send them to African American colleges so they can start their African American businesses. So just want to make you aware, listen to what's going on just a little bit. We're not going to be here too long. We're going to come back and start the second half of our discussion. Right now, let's listen to the 100 Plus African American Men's Course, December the 9th, 2018. All right, everybody, we're back to the program. That was just a little excerpt from the 100 Plus African American Men's Course. Hopefully you enjoyed that. It gets a lot better. December 9th, that's what I want to say. December 9th at the Allen Temple AME Church, the 100 Plus African American Men's Course is in concert. Of course, their fundraiser is to sponsor underprivileged African American youth to attend the Black College Bus Tour. The purpose of that, again, is to inspire folks who have the ability but may not have the finances to be able to attend a Black College tour, to have the opportunity to know that if they take that second step, that the possibilities are unlimited. So you certainly want to come out. Again, that's December the 9th at 5 p.m. at the Allen Temple AME Church. That's located on Reading Road, right close to Seymour. Looking to see you there. All right, let's get back to our topic. Hopefully you got something from that first portion. And in the news today, we're hearing a lot about the Me Too movement. And this is just a soft discussion. I think some people are very sensitive in reference to the Me Too movement, as well as I'm. I'm certainly not in support of any injustice to anybody, female or males. But something that has just kind of crossed my mind, and I wanted my guests to kind of weigh in on it, the level. And I'm thinking, dealing with what we're speaking of today, a lot of major businesses and corporations are male-run, and they're not necessarily abusers or, you know, the kind of folks that do something that's illegal. Is it really affecting, or is it possibly affecting the attitude of corporate America in reference to giving females opportunities, possibly out of fear of assuming that because not necessarily the excessiveness, but the focus of the Me Too movement in America today. So we have a distinguished lady, and certainly she is a lady. I'm going to ask her, does she feel that, is there a possibility that there should be a concern the way some of this stuff is coming out? We had a gentleman that was in his high school accused of being a rapist, a judge for the Supreme Court. And 35 plus years ago, he's now being accused of something when he was a very young person. So anyway, Minister Leslie Calhoun, do you feel that, and I know it's all valid, do you feel that there's a possibility that a negative could turn out of what's going on today?
I'll answer your question this way. I use this scenario a lot of times. When I was growing up, we would take a cartridge out of a camera to a place to get the film developed. The film inside of that cartridge was called a negative. The photographer took the negative into a place called the dark room. In the dark room, there was one thing he never wanted to happen. That was for the light to come on.
Sure.
Because the light would destroy the negative. Anytime things are exposed to the light, it's always a good thing. Your question was, and you prefaced it about the situation happening 35 years ago. There's no time limit on our accountability of our actions. I don't think that he should be held and be set up and tarred and feathered because of what happened years ago. If he has acknowledged him not doing it or doing it, either way, I don't know if he did or did not, or what the situation is. But anytime any information is come to the light, I think it's a good thing.
I guess, and I agree with that. I guess my focus is in the process of looking at human nature. I know that in yesteryear, it used to be a thing that most couples met at the workplace. A lot of people met at work and got married and are still married today. And because of the fear of being misconceived in a negative, the fact that the opportunity to even pursue someone of lifelong interest, it stopped. because of that fear. I certainly am not trying to negate an injustice. I'm speaking more or less from a human nature. The fear of wanting to have a female corporate executive, but understanding that certain things are said that's in corporate America has nothing to do with sexes. It's just the rough life of corporate America. But having the possibility of being misconceived as a negative, and here goes the company down the drain because this was the interpretation of the person, and folks are saying, what?
Yeah.
You know, we did this, because I'm hearing this on news, and as just a regular person, I'm shocked. I'm like, he said they're bringing him up. For instance, this was confusing to me. This is kind of going off subject. The coach and his coworker was accused of domestic violence with his wife, and I think he was not charged. But the simple fact that the press pressed whether he knew or not. And my question was, why was it necessary to take him over the coals? He never beat his wife. He didn't support it, but the simple fact, whether he knew or not, why was that a major fact of to put that coach under that? I was confused. I didn't know. If he had done it, I can see it. You know, I'm sorry? I could see that. But why was he put under pressure for that? So again, we're talking about the STEM, I'm getting all confused, excuse me, folks. But the whole misconcept of, yes, the things that they're bringing out are true, but is it possible that in some cases, is it really valid? Do we have the things in place that to say, no, this isn't really this case, that isn't that case. Everything is being magnified today. And not that injustices don't exist with high-powered folks in high positions and women, but is it a possibility it could be ramifications from some of the stuff, not necessarily in the positive? Leslie.
This has to be continued because we're down to 2 minutes of our show.
And that's okay. We'll run it out.
And
we'll be back next time.
You talked about the person who knew that the wrongdoing was going on, was raked against the coals for not saying nothing.
The question of whether he knew or not that he did an injustice.
No, but he knew, but he didn't say anything.
No.
Is that what you're saying?
No. The question was whether he knew. He may not have known, but why was it important whether he knew? Because he didn't do it, even though the gentleman was.
It was important because he was a complicit person who saw, if he knew, something going on and didn't do anything about it.
But that was a personal issue. That was between him and his wife. Had nothing to do with the football.
Well, then I don't understand.
We say things.
What was the guy?
I'm not trying to call names because I certainly.
No, I didn't say names. I said, well, you said something happened. What happened?
Well, it was a simple fact that there was someone who actually was a football coach, and he had an assistant coach, and there was something going on in the assistant coach's personal life, and they were asking, did the main coach know about what was going on in the man's?
So what was going on in the guy's personal life? Was that a heinous something wrong? Really crazy?
Again, we don't. Allegedly it was
so you would
domestic.
Need more information.
Well, no, it's not knowing. I have information. It was domestic.